Hey, this is Sports Slaw with Lomas Brown, the pro.
And Deb Schneider, I'm the prof. And together, we're the pro and the prof.
I know that's our theme music is normally playing now, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So great. How are you today, Deb?
I'm good. Good holiday with the family. Good. It's nice getting together, taking a little bit of time off. How about you? Did you have a good holiday?
Yeah. I worked on Thanksgiving, of course, which I don't mind doing. Pretty much been doing it over half of my life when I was playing football. But it was nice. It was a good game, competitive game by the Lions. So just getting fully into the holiday spirits. Just a lot of things going on, and just had our election midterms, right? That was the midterms.
Midterm elections.
Midterm elections. So a lot of things going around there. And man, you can see where even the elections, they're creeping into sports where you have the teams and a lot of the individuals now encouraging people to go out and vote and really just telling the population just how important it is to vote, just how important their vote is, that every vote counts. So it's a great message that's going around by our sports teams. And yeah, these are some important times. You definitely have to have your voice being heard these days.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you bring that up because of course we've got Herschel Walker, who's a sports hero in Georgia against Reverend Warnock. So
yeah,
we could debate politics. But
and then Tommy Tuberville.
Yep.
Used to be the coach of Auburn. He's into politics, and you're right. It seems that it's kind of funny, but it seems like sports and politics are trying to go hand in hand. I mean, you had Jack Kemp, I think. Mm-hmm. Long time ago, politician, football player. So, you had some Supreme judges, Allen Beach.
Justice White.
Yeah, that's NFL. Right. Absolutely.
Wizard White.
So we seem to cross over. It just seems to be a natural. Bill Bradley, who played basketball, of course, just totally different sports, but ended up being a politician. So it seems like, I don't know, Deb, I guess it's competitive in politics and it's competitive in sports, and they kind of go, you kind of build some of the same traits as an athlete and as a politician, and you kind of use that doing, like you're saying with Herschel, out there leading, trying to lead the red. I call it the red.
The red.
Red. We'll keep it political. Blue. He was out there leading the red, and just so it just seems like they just both kind of almost go hand in hand.
Well, they do, and then a lot of it I think is name recognition, entertainment name recognition. Because if you've got it, a lot of your people know who you are, and that's what a lot of people vote on. Is just, I've heard this name before.
Yeah.
Political families. But the other thing that's really interesting right now is that this Congress and the Supreme Court have been so activist and doing so much with sports. I mean, right now we have all these name, image, likeness bills. We're looking at changing the way baseball is, but, for getting rid of an exemption for baseball that's existed since 1922. I mean, for 100 years. And all these things are changing so rapidly. So you're right, politics and sports. And I guess that's a question. How involved do you think Congress and politicians should be in what happens on the field and regulating sports?
Well,
from the pro and the prof, this is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could say on the field, I don't think they'll have a lot to do with what happens on the court, on the field, on the ice, on the diamond. But I just think outside of the field, and the reason why I say that, you look at Daniel Snyder, Washington Commanders. I mean, basically, didn't they get the Congress or somebody there looking into them now? And
Yeah, there's a congressional inquiry.
yes, absolutely. So, and it's on, I know that's on workplace behavior and some of the things that have come out about how that atmosphere was in Washington for particularly female employees, employees of different, races. So, that therefore they felt like they needed to get involved because there wasn't enough being done. And I think that's a good thing because I don't think you could have an owner in the NFL like a Daniel Snyder doing some of the things that he's doing or doing some of the things that they have been accused of, and him willingly knowing what was going on and, basically allowed it to go on. If you're the owner of the team and that stuff is going on with your team, you're allowing it, you're enabling it to go on. I just think Congress felt like they needed to step in because enough wasn't being done. Plus, some of the things he was doing, I guess, were infringing on some of our rights,
Oh, yeah.
Deb. So, yes, I have no problem with that. I have no problem if they wanted to step in with the Phoenix Suns owner, even though he said that he will be selling the team or he's looking to find somebody to, buy him out. But when you have owners like this that have power like this, that feel like they can't be touched, then yeah, I feel like sometimes that's when the government needs to come in and be able to say, hey, you're not above everybody else.
Well, I think that's a really interesting question because, yeah, you're not above everybody else. And obviously that's a huge piece of politics today, without talking about anything else there. There's so much going on. But what is the role, and I find this really interesting, what should the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball or, NHL or NCAA be doing as opposed to Congress? Like, at what point does it get to that level that we have to involve Congress and the government in politics?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that, and with, I mean, these are sports that are driven by fans, and
right.
You would think that they would know that they would have to be inclusive, they would have to be diverse, they would have to follow the rules, they would have to be exemplary in what they do because they're handling young lives. When you talk about the NCAA, you're talking about teenagers, minors that they're responsible for. So you would think that they would have every safeguard in place to make sure that not only are they taken care of, but no harm comes to these kids. So, again, it's a different story when you start talking to professional leagues because you're talking about grown folks, you're talking about professionals, you're talking about people that are being paid to do what they need to be done. But when you start talking NCAA and you're talking about young kids and young lives that are still being molded, I think that should have a strong, hard look from the government. I think they should be willing to step in, and I think they should be able to step in and, rectify what's wrong. I really do. It's just harder with the pros that we all know.
Well, you're adults, but boy, you said a lot in that one.
Yeah,
a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
First of all, young lives being molded. I'm still being molded.
Yes.
We are not so old that we're not being molded.
Yes.
We are young lives being molded. But the whole idea of payment and at what point, first of all, I would argue that the NFL or any of the leagues really should be policing their own. And that this should not be something that Congress necessarily needs to be involved in, that there are laws out there. If somebody's breaking a law, let's prosecute. or let's sue. Let's let the process take place. I don't know that Congress needs to be involved in that from a professional level. And I think the NFL, by ignoring it, is letting down the teams, the fans, the players, the back office.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Let's just say you're a female employee with the Washington Commanders, and you've been subjected to this type of behavior that's been going on with them. You've repeatedly gone to your boss and told them that, this is what's going on. And maybe your boss is a guy. Maybe he's a guy, that is a male dominant.
Probably in that organization.
So, right. So let's just say he's a guy that you went to and still nothing is being done. You're still being harassed. All the things that's been going on that you reported to him is still going on. And you just realize that, hey, he might be part of the problem instead of trying to be part of the solution. What do you do there? What happens then?
Bring a lawsuit the way you would do in any other corporation.
Okay.
I would bring a sexual discrimination lawsuit.
Which is what they did, right?
Which
is what some of the employees from Washington did. Now, with them bringing the lawsuit, did that prompt the government to say, hey, this place sounds real toxic, and this is not the first time we've heard this about the Commanders or heard this about the owner. Remember, the owner refused to change the name. The owner was then maybe cheating. I mean, it's just so much stuff.
There's so much that's an entire podcast in and of itself, is what's going on with the Washington Commanders.
Absolutely.
Because there's cooking the books, there's the sexual harassment, there's the racial racial harassment. There are just so many things.
So why do you not say government shouldn't step in at that point, or be able to step in at that point?
I'm not saying that they shouldn't. What I'm saying is that I think the NFL abdicated its responsibility. The NFL should have been on it first.
Mm-hmm.
And that all the owners should have said, this is a toxic situation and this needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think they haven't, Deb? I mean, Daniel has even threatened some of the owners, saying he got stuff on them. So, I mean, why do you think they haven't rallied together and said, hey, this guy's bad for business? We're hearing that now, but this has been going on for years. This has been going on with him.
That's again a really interesting question, and it's a good question. Like, why haven't they? He says, Daniel Snyder, there have been all these allegations. He's got PIs out there and he's got stuff on people. That may be part of it, but that, again, in and of itself is kind of scary, that there's stuff out there to get on people, on other owners, which kind of goes to a whole cultural thing as far as what the culture of the owners. But also there's the question of, he may be bad for business, but no publicity is bad publicity. But a lot of people say that. And then if the name's out there, and in the current political climate and the current climate that we have in this country, some people may say, that's not a bad thing from an owner standpoint, because it's all about the money. And if the name's out there,
but for the NFL, the NFL.
I'm guessing, Lomas.
Yeah, but no, I'm glad you are, because some people, because the draft, they were talking about when it first started, and the commissioner told a story where it was 10. He said it was 20 people there, including the team. With the teams, it was 20 people at the first draft. Now, he challenged Detroit to bring in 1 million people. He's challenged
we will.
1 million people. And I agree, Deb. Anything the NFL does is news. Anything they do. So to me, I know what they say with bad news, it kind of keeps you in the news.
It's there.
but I don't know if they need that type of news. I mean, there's so much they can pull from. And now with what's going on, think about it, with them losing viewership and losing attendance with women. And
Yep.
then you had Deshaun Watson going on. You had the punter from Buffalo that gang raped the young lady. You know, you have all these domestic abuse allegations going on against women, and they feel like their voice isn't being heard. So now they're taking their dollars away from the NFL, and the NFL feels this. They feel it. They know it, because women, hey, y'all rule, man. You got hot, man, and they start losing women, just like now they're losing youth. I mean, they said there was a couple 100,000 youth that don't play now. And this moms pulling their kids away from football because of the dangers they feel for football. So the NFL got so many other little battles that they're battling. I don't understand why they would want to have this little mold battle.
I agree. That's why I'm saying I think they've abdicated some responsibility. They perhaps by omission, by not thinking about it earlier and not doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's nothing. You're right. The NFL can get away with absolutely nothing. They are in the news every single day.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
Some good, some bad.
Mm-hmm.
But people tend toward bad news.
Yeah, you're right.
They really do.
Great point.
They really, really do. But you're right. You know, the safety and moms pulling the kids and not playing. I mean, a lot of that has to do with the concussions and the concussion protocol. And
yes,
you know, we've seen it. We saw it this last month. I mean, not only Tua Tagovailoa, but we also saw Matt Stafford, and we've seen, you know, on any given week, I'm sure, and you would know better than I would, how many people end up in concussion protocol.
Yeah, and Deb, it seems like now they're really erring on the side of caution now. After, like you saying, what happened with Tua, I've seen a couple of Lions games. The last 3 games, we've had a player pulled out for concussions. The last 3 games, so it's been like at least 5 or 6 guys. So if you average that, you know, with every team, it's a lot of guys going into concussion protocol. And you know, they got different levels of concussion, how they're concussed. But, you know, again, I just think now they got spotters up there that if you even take a hard hit, you may not even be concussed. But if they feel that the impact is hard enough, they can whistle down or whatever to the sideline and alert the referees, and the referees will come pull you out the game. So we've seen that a lot. And, you know, again, it's the optics of everything, because that Tua optic, that was, hey, Deb, you know me, I've been around football over half of my life and played, well, when I was younger, over half of my life. It's
because we didn't come right into football. We were playing Tuba, I believe.
Yeah. But man, I'm telling you, when I seen that hit that Tua took and his fingers froze up the way I had never seen that before. And here I am. Like I said, I played the game 20 some odd years and never seen that before. And that was scary when I seen it, because you thinking the guy's gonna die or something. So just think about
which has happened on the field before.
Absolutely. So just think about a mom sitting there watching the game and she sees that. You know, it's just, you know, so yeah, I understand why they're doing what they're doing now, you know, to make sure that these guys, if they are concussed, attention is brought to them and they're pulled out the game.
Okay, so you're talking about optics, and optics are during a game on national broadcast. It's being broadcast. You're the broadcaster. You know, this is when you're seeing it. What about, and this is a behind the scenes question, realistically, isn't more happening in practice? I mean, you have more guys in practice. You've got the practice squads, and who's watching that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And
I mean, I feel like it's a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We see this.
That's a great question. I'm gonna just say the only difference, Deb, is that they can focus in more on the attention of the players in the practice environment, more so than I think, you know, in a game environment when you talking 60,000 fans and you got cameras and you got TV and you got everything else. You got the sideline police there watching uniforms. You got security. You got so much more going on during a game than you doing during practice. I think you can really concentrate in, and if somebody is in trouble, you know, you could pull them out. Plus, the other thing I'm gonna say is the player. You got to put some of that on the players too, Deb. I mean, we land a lot of this on the NFL and the clubs and the doctors and saying this, yeah, their responsibility. But guess what? It's our responsibility too. The players got to be responsible for, hey, if I'm not feeling right, or if I think I've been concussed, then I'm getting help. I'm gonna talk to the doctor and get help. Now, I've already told you what's the reverse side of that is that the teams will use that against you in negotiation. That's why players don't like to do that, like to fully trust the teams, because they know they're going to turn around and use that against them in negotiation. So it's a fine edge that you kind of walking up to. But I would think in terms of, I'm a player, I got 50, 60 more years of life left. You know what I'm saying, Deb? I want to make sure I got quality of life. So over the money that I'm gonna negotiate with the team, I think I'll take quality of life over money.
Okay, I'm gonna submit that's someone, I'm gonna say our age, looking back at 18 or at 20.
So
you know, I mean, yeah, you're thinking about it looking back, but even I was invincible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when you were playing, I mean, you were the big fella. You know, how many of these guys are really going to admit weakness? Because there's always somebody in the back who's going to take my spot.
That's true. That's a great point. But that's why you got to surround yourself with people, you know, that's in your corner. That's not looking at the money, looking at all the ancillary things. You know what I'm saying? They got to be in for you. That's the only way that's gonna work. And you're right. I mean, everything you said, I mean, I spewed all that out, but you're absolutely right. I think if it would have been turned around on me, I would be the same way. So I'm saying you're right. I am sure
at some place in an 18-year NFL career, plus college, plus a little bit of high school, that at some point you did not pull yourself out when right now, future Lomas would have told young Lomas to get the hell off the field.
Am
I right on that one?
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. So that's why you got to surround yourself with good people. That's what I told this group of people, kids at Cass Tech. I say, if you're gonna have a posse, you know, be one of those guys, you know, that sit back and listen to the other guys. I say, don't be always having to be the one that's doing all the talking. Sit back and listen. Learn to become a good listener. I say you'll learn a lot more listening than talking. You know what I'm saying? Then you'll know who you want in your posse and who you don't want in your posse just by sitting there listening to them and everything.
With the caveat of always listen to your mom.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh my God, I don't know what the big man did to you all, but they gave y'all an extra sense or something that they didn't give us, because you're so right about that. Every time I did, it was good. Every time I didn't, I'm just bumping my head into the wall. So it's your
shout out to Lomas's mom.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. You know, we talk about the concussion protocols and that, and we talk about it getting better. Practice is obviously a problem. I'm sure there are a lot of people, but the whole, we've never really talked about it. The CTE and the settlement with Dr. Amalu and, that 2017 settlement. Right now, there have been over 2,000 players who've applied. Only 30%, I believe, have actually been approved.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of requirements that you have to go through in order to get approved. I mean, like you have to play a certain number of seasons, like what is it, half a season? You have to half of an eligible season. You have to pass this test. You had, what do you think about that whole CTE settlement? I've always wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a sore spot for a lot of players. The former players. I mean, the first thing that kind of went wrong was them bringing in all those attorneys. I hate to say that, Deb, but that was the first thing, because you had sharks. They were sharks.
Yes,
they were sharks.
I will admit there are a lot of very, very bad attorneys. The sharks. Yeah.
It was a feeding frenzy, Deb.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you just had attorneys calling up players, trying to get as many players as they could, because the more players, the more money that they were made. And then the other thing is they got their money right off the top. I mean, I guess that's the process. I don't know. I don't understand that. A lot of players didn't understand that either.
Well, maybe I can jump in on that one. I believe this was taken as a class. It was a class action, and it was on a contingency basis. Mm-hmm. So just for anybody who's not familiar with what that means, that's usually the way personal injury cases, when there's an injury, are taken. And the lawyer then says, I won't get anything unless you win, unless we win. So it sounds like we're all on the same team.
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
I'm not getting anything unless we win. But what happens is that then the contingency is usually about a third of what is. On top of that, the lawyer, the way it works is, in general, you, the plaintiff, the one who's suing, are going to pay all the expenses. So plane flights, copying charges, anything that's an actual expense. And the lawyer takes on themselves the research and their time. And then if you win, and then they turn this into a class action. So you had a lot of lawyers, you had a lot of plaintiffs, and a class action just means that everybody who's similarly situated, we're going to bring it all into one lawsuit. So now you have the lawyers who are getting 1/3, basically right off the top. Well, off the top are all the expenses. So any expenses you have to pay, regardless of whether you win or lose. Then you win, 1/3 goes straight to the lawyers. Then the other 2/3 is now split between all of the class. And the class means we have named plaintiffs, but we know there are thousands of people who are similarly situated. In other words, thousands of ex-NFL players who might have CTE or some symptom. So then the rest of it is split between them. And then in the settlement, they said, well, you have to take this test that is a baseline assessment test, and you have to pass that test to show that you actually have some impairment.
Right. What level? What
level? Right. And then the settlement depends kind of on your score of the test.
Yeah, absolutely, Deb. You could get a 1, a 1.5, 2 was like the worst out of it, but that's how they had us ranked: 1, 1.5, 2.
Okay, so if you got a 2, you got a higher settlement than if you got a 1.
Yes, because 2 is supposed to be, I guess that's supposed to be the most critical, type of trauma, CTE trauma. Yeah. So 2 was, 2 guys would get paid off of it. But then Deb, so let me ask you this: in some of these 2, then they have a pool that you have to pay into a 2.
Okay.
And what is that typical when you get into class action lawsuits? That, because again, you got, like you said, you got the lawyers, you got expenses, but then they had like a general pool, I guess, to help for future stuff down the line. I don't know, but
I'm not sure if that was a pool for everybody to pay expenses for the lawyers in case you didn't win, or if it was a pool such that they kept some money. Are you saying out of the settlement that they have a
I'm
pool?
saying I'm how they made it sound is for, like, I guess for future settlements or something like.
Okay, right.
A certain percentage of your money or your settlement, you have to go into this pool too. It's like, I think it might be like 5%.
Okay, so you're paying money into a pool for future too.
I think it is.
Yeah, because it
that's what
was a
we'll go for.
settlement, and this is how much the NFL is putting in, and that needs to be spread out. So
Okay, so that's why you have
probably,
okay.
and
Okay.
then probably
But
hopefully that.
there, but again, the problem is, like you say, all this was set out and everything. But the problem is now their standards, like their standards are so. We found out, there was some race norming
Yes.
on where they started black players out lower than the white players. But even I've taken the tests and even these tests, I just don't know. I mean, I haven't taken a lot of tests like this to say that one was, it was just some unbiased things in that test, but it was just different things in there that I felt that a lot of players, when they took that baseline test, they felt that it was an unfair test for us to be taken. Now, like I say, there's certain things in there I can't really remember, but it was just a different test to take, and mine came back inconclusive, meaning they say they couldn't come up with anything, a level or anything, so they wanted me to retake the test. So it's subjective too, I guess. In a way, it must be subjective.
It's got it right, and it's a neurological exam, so to some extent it's subjective. But one of the things is it's called a baseline assessment. I've done a little bit of research on this, and it's the same test. It doesn't matter if you're an NFL player or a member of the general public, or you were in a car accident, whatever it is. We're going to give you this baseline assessment, and then they do this race norming, and they supposedly factor in socioeconomic status, is the way they put it. So now, looking at that, just let's look at the NFL versus the general population. Every NFL player, I think without exception, has graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
Not every member of the general population has graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's an immediate change. Mm-hmm. I would suggest, I know there are stats that say 46% of NFL players have graduated from college.
Okay.
I would suggest that, especially nowadays, it's probably higher. 31% of the general population has graduated from college.
Wow.
So when you look at that, you're saying immediately, if you're going to try to race norm, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It doesn't make sense, because NFL players are not the general public.
Right.
You guys are, quite frankly, a cut above.
Yeah, that's different. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow. That makes sense too. That really does.
Yeah. So when you're taking the same test and you're scoring differently based on a perceived socioeconomic upbringing, and you're saying, and we called it race norming, you're making assumptions that are, quite frankly, untrue. Just simply untrue by looking at 3 sets of very basic numbers.
Wow, that's interesting.
Oh, I taught you something.
Yeah. I wonder, did the NFL look at this? I wonder, did they think about this?
Well, there was the lawsuit, and again, a lot of the NFL, and you see this with the concussion protocol, and we're seeing it with the lawsuit. The NFL says, we're going to get a medical expert in here. So the medical experts are running these tests. I mean, the NFL didn't give you the test. You went to a doctor that the NFL said, here, take this test.
Right.
And so in some senses, they're saying we're relying on another expert, but the expert may not realize everything. I mean, we're saying, okay, this is the way we normally would do this test.
Right. That's
And I would also submit that saying it's based on socioeconomic status is not the same thing as saying it's based on race.
yeah. I mean, well, Deb, I never understood the whole thing anyway. Why, why they would bring that into that when you're talking concussion, brain trauma. I mean, I never understood well, what does that have to do with anything? Economics.
Because
anything.
they're trying to figure out if you've been hurt, if you have CTE. Yeah. And again, and you're going to be different than the guy standing next to you because your brain and your physiology and your anatomy is different.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. We have to get somebody higher up.
I know.
Yeah,
And that was just, just a little bit of research on this, on the way this was done. A really interesting thing that just happened this week was, I believe it was Matthew Gee, who his widow, he died at 49, died in his sleep. He had, he played for USC, and his widow had sued USC and the NCAA for saying that, he had CTE and this caused a lot of his substance abuse problems and on, because we know that's kind of a result. And the jury, Los Angeles jury, just came back in favor of the NCAA and said that they were not responsible, which
you think
was interesting.
Pandora's box reaction, meaning they didn't want to open it up, or I mean, I mean, because again, Deb, you got so many players. I mean, you got more that don't get in the pros, that don't go to the next level, than you have that go to the next level. So, I mean, the probability of a lot of them having problems still from, college is high. I mean, for a lot of guys having CTE, and probably don't even know they're really affected by it, because they probably think, well, I played this many years ago, this and that. But I mean, you've done damage to yourself. I mean,
right. It doesn't automatically show up immediately.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a progressive, but and think about it, from college, you probably didn't have the safety protocols. You probably didn't have as many people watching. There's probably more happening in practice. There's probably, and you have a lot more players.
Yeah.
So legally, that's an interesting case, because like we just talked about, the NFL was a class action. So we said we have a lot of similarly situated. That was what I'm going to call a one-off case. So had that one, and I'm not so sure there won't be others, because again, he passed away. He was 49. Nothing had happened, and he paid, I want to say back in the late 80s, 90s or something when he played. So he played a while back, and now when we look at this and we say, okay, if every player who possibly could have CTE brings their own action against the NCAA, first of all, you have many more lawyers involved, right?
Yes. Yeah. A lot more.
But you're going to get some that are going to end up like this case, and others that I think are going to win, because as you get closer proximity, it's going to become more and more apparent that yes, this player had CTE. Like you look at an Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see that with collegiate players too. I cannot imagine that you went through college without having a concussion as a football player.
Right. You're right.
So that opens up a huge thing. I mean, that playing that out, that could be, the end of the NCAA.
Yeah. But then they said, they rated the concussion as seeing stars. So, and man, that's commonplace playing football, where you just see stars and you just shake it off. They're saying those are like mini concussions.
Wow.
So Oh, I mean, yeah. So it's just, again, it's just different levels to this, different levels to it.
A lot of them. I think that's, I don't know. So what do you think we should do?
Ooh, it's not much we can do. I mean, especially with football, that's the nature of the game. Unfortunately, it's contact. The only way you can get better in football is you got to have contact. That's what practice is. Where all the other sports, I think they can get away with practicing without contact. We can't do that. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. I just don't know. I know, again, you definitely know what you're signing up for. I just think the best thing for these leagues, especially the NFL, is to stop hiding information. If you got information, put it out there so the guys can see it, they can digest it, then they can make their own decisions on it. I think what gets the NFL in trouble is when they try to hide things, then it comes to the light. Then the next thing you know, you got a class action lawsuit against you because you're trying to hide this information, So I just think they just need to be more transparent. It might be the best thing for the game of football and for the NFL and for these colleges is just to be more transparent about things. Everybody knows that football is a brutal game. It's a tough game. You got to be tough-minded, you got to do some things that you wouldn't normally do for other sports. So that I just think awareness there and transparency probably would be the two things that I think the NFL and the NCAA has to concentrate, and high school have to concentrate on.
Right. Well, you coach high school, so and you're, I'm sure you see more than most high school coaches. You know the game.
Yeah.
And you know what to look for.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Yes.
But and I guess my final thoughts on this one is, it's a difficult question because yes, football, as some of the other sports, are dangerous. Mm-hmm. Safety is a huge piece of it. Getting the right helmet, the equipment. We've come a long way since Teddy Roosevelt said, "Hey, we have to, we're creating the NCAA, and your job is to make sure these players don't die because of the flying wedges and their little no helmets or their little leather caps that they were wearing way back when."
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
So transparency is a piece of it, but there's also got to be some teeth to that transparency. Because that transparency turns into mom saying, I'm not having my kid play. Right. And if my kid doesn't play, we don't have a sport.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely.
There's a feeder. You need a lot of kids to get to those levels. I mean, I spent yesterday watching the high school playoffs, and some of those kids are phenomenal. And, but you need that feeder group.
You're right. That's a great point.
There's got to be some teeth, and there's got to be some real looking into safety. And when I say real looking into safety, I mean like beyond the optics of a game. And maybe there has to be something that says, if you're a player and you're replaced, that there's a pool of money at the end. Changing contracts, there's a pool of money at the end because you played, not a non-guaranteed contract.
Why not? That's a great idea. Why not? Why not let these guys, build up over, like you say, over these 4 years? Maybe it's an annuity, that maybe it's something. Maybe they could invest in their own 401k plan. It just has it. I know that would show that they're employees, and it would just kill that.
That's a whole other conversation.
I know, but it should. That's a great point. It should be something. It should be something at the end of the rainbow for those guys.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to say for the NFL too, because if you stood up and said, "I have a concussion," that you should get something. So now I'm changing the entire NFL contract.
Yeah.
Money up front and money at the end.
I don't know if they're gonna be happy with you, them owners.
I don't think so. I don't think, but I think we're running out of time. So this has been a great discussion on
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it has.
I'm glad I got a chance to ask you about
we
the
didn't.
settlement.
That was funny. Before we got on, we didn't know what we were kind of going to talk about, and it's just like, you know, it just, like you said, once we got down this one little hole, it just took us to many different places. So yeah, it was great. I think this was a great conversation.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, and check us out on Spotify, on YouTube, on sportslaw.com.